greens. I may eat mustard greens one day, a couple days later I may eat some collard greens, a few days later I may eat some kale or maybe some rutabaga greens. What's up, Lazy Dog fam? Hope all y'all are having a wonderful day. It is Wednesday, September 18th here in South Georgia, and today's video is all about greens. We're going to talk about why you should be growing and eating greens from your backyard garden. We're going to talk about the three main types of greens that are grown down here, the pros and cons of some of those, and then I'm going to show you how we get some planted in one of our raised beds here behind me. So if you didn't already know, you need to be growing and eating lots of greens from your backyard garden. Greens are loaded with vitamins and all kind of other good stuff. They're also really high in fiber, which makes them good for your gut and your digestive system. And another reason I really like greens is they will actually get you full. So you take a bowl full of greens, maybe add a little side of meat, say some bacon or a smoked pork chop, and you will feel really full after eating those. You won't be hungry just an hour later, and you won't have taken in a lot of calories doing so. So not only are they really good for you, but they'll fill you up without a lot of calories. Now, there are lots of different greens you can grow and eat from your backyard garden. The term greens is a very, very broad term, and we could spend all day talking about every single green out there that you can grow and eat. But on today's video, I'm going to focus on what I like to call the big three, the ones that are most commonly grown and consumed down here. So let's start out with number one, which is turnips. Now, unlike the other two that we'll mention, with turnips you get a root and you get the greens as well. So it's like a root veggie plus all those turnip greens above the soil. Also, unlike the other two I'll mention, turnips are usually a one-time harvest. So you wait till those greens get nice and well developed and you pull up the entire plant, harvest that root, and you have the greens as well. And as far as flavor and taste goes, turnips, in my opinion, kind of sit in the middle between mustard and collards, which we'll also talk about on this list. So mustard tends to be a little more spicy, and then collards can have a little stronger flavor, and then turnips are kind of somewhere in the middle there. Now, personally, I don't grow a whole lot of turnips. There is one variety I have grown a good bit in the past. I'll tell you about that in a minute. But I'm not a big fan of the turnip root itself. I don't really like greens with that turnip root cut up in them. I know a ton of people do. If you like that, keep doing it. I'm just not a big fan of the turnip root, so I don't grow a whole lot of turnip greens. I'd rather grow something that I'm going to get repeat harvest from because I'm not seeking out that root. Another reason I don't grow a whole lot of turnips, for some reason down here, the pests seem to target turnips more than they do mustard and collards. We get a lot of flea beetle pressure on turnips, and they'll just turn those leaves into a skeleton. So I have to spray turnips a lot more than I would the other two. Now, as I mentioned to you earlier, there is a variety of turnips I've grown in the past that I really liked, a variety called all-top turnips. So these don't really make a root. They look a lot like mustard greens. They just form greens above the soil, and you can do repeat harvest on that particular variety. So you can just cut them close to the soil level and they will continue to regrow. You can usually get 3 or 4 harvests per plant throughout the cool growing season. And then as far as planting turnips goes, most people that are growing the traditional varieties, growing them because they want that root there, are just going to direct seed those in their backyard garden, just sprinkling the seeds along the row there or maybe over an entire raised bed. Now, if you're growing that all-top variety that I mentioned to you earlier, you can grow that one from transplants. I've done that in the past. But if you're growing the varieties that produce that actual turnip root, just direct seed those, and you can plant them pretty thick, but if you want some nice big roots, you may want to thin them out a little bit once they come up. Then we've got number 2 on our big 3 list, which is mustard greens. And of these 3, mustard greens are probably the fastest growing greens. You can be harvesting mustard greens a lot of times just 30 or 40 days after planting. So it gives you a quick reward in your backyard garden. You don't have to wait long at all to be eating some mustard greens. Now, as I mentioned earlier, mustard greens tend to be a little bit spicy. Now, they're more spicy if you eat them raw. Once you cook them down a little bit, they lose a little bit of that bite. And depending on the variety you grow, some varieties are more spicy than others. But in general, mustard greens tend to be really, really tender, which means they cook a lot faster than, say, turnips or collards do. And then as far as varieties go, there's a lot of different mustard green varieties out there. You've got the older, more traditional curled leaf mustard types, and then you've got more the smooth leaf mustard types, what they call the tatsoi types. That's what we're going to be actually planting today. I like the smooth leaf types over the curled leaf types just because they're easier to clean. They don't get dirt and all those little curls and crevices there. And you've also got red mustard, which tends to be pretty spicy compared to green mustard. Lots of different types out there, whether you want something really spicy, something really mild, something with a curled leaf, or something with a flat leaf. And then as far as planting mustard goes, most people are going to direct seed those. You're not going for a root when you're planting mustard, so you can plant those really, really thick, really, really dense. So most people just scatter the seeds along their garden there and just roll with them that way. Don't even worry about thinning them out. Now, the variety we're going to be planting today, the Savannah mustard, the seeds on this are a little more pricey than a traditional heirloom mustard variety. So I have grown these out from transplants in the past and put the little plug transplants in the ground. That works fine, but you can also direct seed them. And then third on our list, we have collard greens. And as I've told you many times in the past, depending on how you grow them, I firmly believe collard greens have the potential to give you more food per plant than any other thing you grow in your backyard garden. Now, compared to the other two on this list, compared to turnips and mustard, collard greens do have a stronger flavor. Some people say it's a little bit of a bitter flavor, but it's definitely a stronger flavor than you get with mustard and turnips. And some people don't like collards for that reason. I absolutely love collards. And compared to the other two on this list, collard greens are tougher and thicker. So it takes a lot longer to cook collard greens than it does, say, mustard or turnip greens. You got to simmer them down for quite a while to get them nice and tender, usually a couple hours, and they're ready to go. Now, some backyard gardeners will direct seed collards, just sprinkling the seeds out there in the garden. I've even seen some people till them up a little spot and go out there and just throw the seeds like they're planting a cover crop. They usually plant the old Veggies types of collards, and they'll just go out there and do a single cut. So they'll wait till the leaves get nice and well developed and just do a single cut on those plants, a one-time harvest. I grow them a little bit differently. I grow mine out from transplants because I'm not doing a single cut harvest. We're just cropping the leaves as they grow, leaving a few leaves at the top. That way we can get continual harvest all throughout the winter months, into the spring, and even into early summer sometimes. So if you're just going to single cut your collards, go ahead and direct seed them. Just scatter those seeds out in your garden. But if you're going to crop them like we do for repeated harvest, you might want to transplant them. That way you can get a little more precise spacing in your garden. So those are the big three in my opinion, but there's lots of others we didn't even mention. We didn't talk about kale. We didn't talk about rutabagas, which also have some really delicious greens. I like to have a wide variety of greens in my backyard garden in the winter months. So I may eat mustard greens one day, a couple days later I may eat some collard greens, a few days later I may eat some kale or maybe some rutabaga greens. So it's good to have a lot of options. So now let's go over here to this little round bed that we prepped a few weeks ago and get some of this Savannah mustard planted. I'll show you how we do it. So this is the bed that we prepped on a video a couple weeks ago. What we did here is we basically just pulled out our spider irrigation system. We put down some Coop Grow organic fertilizer and then topped it off with mushroom compost like we see here. We've had some good rain since then, so that fertilizer should be nice and broken down in there and available to these plants once they germinate and start growing. Now there's a couple different ways we can plant mustard greens: in a raised bed or in an in-ground garden plot. We can plant them in rows, so we could come along here and make some little rows with our finger there, just make a little shallow trench there, make another one right beside it, scatter our seeds along that little trench and cover them up. But in a smaller round bed like this, I think you're better off just scattering seeds over the entire bed and then topping it off with a little more soil. So that's what we're going to do today. If you've got a longer rectangular bed, you may want to plant them in rows. That works just fine. Here I want complete soil coverage. I want to see mustard greens over this entire bed, so we're going to go with the scatter technique. But before I go scattering some seeds, I am going to just lightly mix up this top layer of compost here. Not going to dig too deep, just going to fluff it up a little bit. So now that I've broken up any of those big chunks of compost that were left in this bed, we're ready to scatter some seeds. Now these packets of Savannah mustard seed that we have on our website have 500 seeds per bag approximately. And so that should be plenty enough for this little round bed, which is about 4 foot in diameter. I'm just going to sprinkle these in my hand here, and then we're going to start sprinkling them along this bed here, just trying to get them as evenly broadcasted as possible. Now that we've got those seeds evenly broadcasted over that round raised bed, we need to cover those seeds. Since we didn't do this in rows, we just need to cover the entire bed with a light layer of soil. You could use a potting soil for this. I'm going to use some of this Pro Mix BX here because I have plenty of it on hand. I want to make sure I don't put any chunks down here. So I'm going to grind it up kind of finely with my hand and just lightly sprinkle it over this bed here. These seeds don't have to be planted very deep at all, so it's not like we have to put a real thick layer of this stuff down, just a light layer to cover those seeds. Now that we've got that light layer of Pro Mix over the entire bed, we can add our little spider irrigation system back here. So I'm just going to hook that back into our little elbow right there and tighten it down. Now to get these seeds germinated, I probably will hand water this bed here. These little pieces of drip tubing here put out a decent amount of water and should be enough to keep this bed happy once those plants get up and going. But to get everything nice and evenly germinated, I'm going to hand water it once or twice a day over the next few days. Shouldn't take long at all for those seeds to come up. Once they come up, we'll rely on the drip irrigation solely here. The way I have this set up, that's another reason I didn't want to do this in rows. Well, it took a lot longer to do a row beside each little line of tubing here. Better off to just scatter seeds over the entire bed, put this in place, get our seeds up, and then this can keep everything happy. Now, even though that round raised bed isn't very big, we can get a ton of greens from that little 4 foot wide round bed. I wouldn't say enough greens to keep us happy, but close to it. I've got another round bed beside it that's available. I'll probably wait a week, plant that one. That way I have on different harvest cycles. And with 2 round raised beds full of those Savannah mustard greens, we should have plenty to carry us well into the winter. We can usually harvest these plants at least 4 times or so throughout their growth cycle, so a lot of groceries from a small space. And if you're a fan of mustard greens but have never tried this Savannah mustard variety, I would highly recommend giving it a try. It's got a nice upright growth habit. The leaves stay nice and clean even after you get a heavy rain, so there's minimal prep time getting it washed and clean and ready to cook, and those leaves are nice and tender and delicious. They cook up really fast. And if you've never grown any greens at all but want to give it a try, this variety would be a great one for beginner greens growers, just because it's so easy to grow and it grows so fast. So I hope you enjoyed the video today. Let me know in the comments below what types of greens you're going to be growing in your backyard garden this fall and winter. As always, you can find the Savannah mustard seeds on our website at lazydogfarm.com. And if you want to see what those look like when they're ready to harvest, watch this video right here that we did last year. We'll show you what they look like full grown and how we harvest them. So check that out, and we'll see you next time right here at Lazy Dog Farm.